Good morning and welcome to a meeting of the Subcommittee of Zoning and Franchises. I am Councilmember Kevin Riley, Chair of the Subcommittee. This morning I am joined by Chair Lewis, Councilmember Batra, Shulman, Abreu, Carr, and Palladino. And we are also joined remotely by Councilmember Moyer. Today we will vote on 3 land use items, 2 in Queens and 1 in Brooklyn, that we heard by the subcommittee on June 13th. We will also hold public hearings for 2 proposals, 1 in Brooklyn and 1 in Staten Island. Before we begin, I recognize the subcommittee counsel to review the hearing procedures.
Thank you, Chair Riley. I am Arthur Ha, counsel to this subcommittee. This meeting is being held in hybrid format. Council members who would like to ask questions or make comments should either indicate so verbally or if participating remotely by using the Zoom raise hand function. The chair will recognize members to speak. We ask all participants for your continued patience should any technical difficulties arise. And Chair Riley will now continue with today's agenda.
Thank you, Council. Today we will vote to approve LUs 237 and 238 for the 1656 West 10th Street rezoning proposal in Councilmember Yeager's district in Brooklyn. This proposal will rezone an existing R5 zoning district to an R6A zoning district and establish an MIH program area utilizing option 1 and 2. This approval would facilitate the construction of a new 6-story residential building. Councilmember Yeager is in support of this application. We will also vote to disapprove LUs 231 relating to the 43rd Avenue demapping proposal in Councilmember Palladino's district in Queens. This proposal seeks an amendment to the city map to allow the closing of a portion of 43rd Avenue between 222nd Street and 223rd Street. The adjustment of grades and block dimensions and dispositions of the demapped portion of the street to the applicant for fair market value. This application will legalize a retaining wall that is encroaching onto 43rd Avenue by several feet. The council will disapprove this application because the evidence and testimony presented during the public hearing made it clear that the applicant created the present conditions by building a significantly large retaining wall to level off the lot and maximize development without regard to the narrow street that the wall is located on or the negative impact it will have on pedestrians in this residential community. Finally, I note that the council is in receipt of the written statement from the applicant that the application for LUs 230 relating to the 189-10 Northern Boulevard Commercial Overlay, also in Councilmember Palladino's district in Queens, has been withdrawn. Therefore, pursuant to Council Rule 11.60B, LUs 230 relating to the 189-10 Northern Boulevard Commercial Overlay is void, and I make a motion to file the items to remove them from the council's calendar. I would now like to allow Councilmember Palladino to give her statement.
Thank you and good morning, Chair Riley, and to everybody here. I am opposed to this demapping for several reasons that highlight the negative impact of encroachment onto public land created by the current retaining wall within our residential community. Firstly, it is undeniable that the retaining wall in question is indeed encroaching on public land. Additionally, there is compelling evidence to suggest that the current owner reconstructed this wall. The encroachment itself poses significant concerns due to the location on a narrow street within our pedestrian-friendly neighborhood. The presence of this encroachment directly undermines the intended street design and negatively affects the overall pedestrian experience. The sheer size and height of the existing wall starkly contrast with the predominant condition of the street, which features a more pleasant and sustainable vegetated planting edge between side yards and the sidewalk. The current wall, being in direct contradiction to this established condition, diminishes the quality of life in our neighborhood. Rather than legalizing the present unlawful condition, it is important to emphasize that the appropriate solution lies in the property owner's responsibility to rebuild a retaining wall on its own rather large property that is consistent with the predominant built condition in this neighborhood. Moreover, it is crucial to preserve the public realm and promote pedestrian-friendly streetscape. We should not allow the privatization of public land for the sole benefit of two homeowners. Our neighborhood's well-being and the enjoyment of its residents should, in instances like this, take precedence over private interests. In sight of these points, I firmly believe that voting no is the right course of action to protect the integrity and character of our residential community, ensuring a pleasant and sustainable environment for all of its residents. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, okay, great. So I'll also add to this. Concerning the land, the overlay on Northern Boulevard, I am pleased that the applicant has withdrawn its proposal and is willing to rethink how the project can be modified to make it more appropriate. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palladino. Are there any council members who have any questions or remarks about today's item at this time? I now call for a vote to approve LUs 237 and 238 relating to the 1656 West 10th Street rezoning, to disapprove LUs 231 relating to the 43rd Avenue demapping, and to file LUs 230 relating to the 189-10 Northern Boulevard Commercial Overlay Proposal. Council, can we please call the roll?
Chair Riley.
Aye on all.
Councilmember Moya.
Aye on all.
Councilmember Lewis. Councilmember Abreu.
Aye.
Councilmember Botcher.
Aye.
Councilmember Schulman.
Aye.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye on all.
Chair, by a vote of 7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and no abstentions, the items are adopted and referred to the full Land Use Committee.
Thank you, Council. I will now open the public hearing on preconsidered LUs relating to the ULURP number C210314 ZMK related to the 1160 Flushing Avenue proposal in Councilmember Gutierrez District in Brooklyn. This application seeks a zoning map amendment to rezone the existing M1-1 zoning district to an M1-5 zoning district. For anyone wishing to testify on this item remotely, if you have not already done so, you must register online, and you may do that now by visiting the council's website at council.nyc.gov/landuse. And once again, for anyone with us in person, please see one of the sergeant-at-arms to submit a speaker's card. Councilmember Gutierrez could not be with us here today, but will be sending a statement for the record. Council, can we please call the first panel for this item?
The applicant panel consists of Tucker Reed, Leah Archibald, and Vivian Liao.
Council, please administer the affirmation.
Panelists, would you please raise your right hand and answer the question in the affirmative? Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before the subcommittee and in answer to all council member questions? Thank you.
Thank you. For the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin. Panelists, as you begin, I'll just ask that you please reinstate your name and organization for the record. You may begin.
Hello, thank you so much.
Thank you. I just need you to press the button and speak into the mic.
How's that, better?
That's good. Thank you.
No one's ever told me I wasn't loud enough, so.
You're great. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thanks so much for hearing this today. My name is Leah Archibald, and I'm the Executive Director of Evergreen. We're the local development corporation that works in industrial North Brooklyn to increase the quantity and quality of working class jobs in our community. And I am joined by the Totem team.
Yep. Hi, I'm Vivian Liao. I'm a principal and co-founder of Totem. We're a Brooklyn-based real estate developer.
Tucker Reed from Totem as well.
Next slide. Should we start the...
Yeah. Like we can't just do it with our blinks, right? We are delighted to be part of the team that is bringing forward this super unique mixed-use application for 1160 Flushing. At Evergreen, we work both to help small businesses grow, predominantly manufacturers, and also our organization is a small-scale industrial developer. We have 5 of our own buildings that we lease out at affordable rates.
And as I mentioned, Totem is a Brooklyn-based real estate developer. We really approach all of our work in a community-driven manner. You can see on the screen that all of our developments focus on increasing affordability in neighborhoods where we work, economic mobility, and opportunity, working with community-based organizations, and prioritizing regenerative design. Next slide.
So you can see, this is a profile of Community District 4. Let's go to the next slide. This is the more interesting one, I think, is, we work really hard to help manufacturers grow so we can keep working class jobs in our community. And it's really clear from this set of community indicators that this is necessary. You can see that in Community District 4, unemployment is higher than Brooklyn and New York City as a whole. And of course, and you can also see that levels of educational attainment are lower than in Brooklyn and New York City. And one of the reasons that we work with small manufacturers to help them grow is because they are an excellent source of high-quality working class jobs with low barriers to entry. You don't need high levels of educational attainment. You don't need college. You don't even need high school. You don't need to even have English as a first language mastery. So, we think that any way that we can increase viable manufacturing space in the community is a great way to improve our opportunity to grow working class jobs. And you'll hear more about the 1160 Flushing program, but we think that this is a really good way to allow for increased commercial growth and still create excellent opportunities for small manufacturers to grow. Next slide. And we aren't the only ones that think this, right? So you can see we, in our own North Brooklyn Brownfield Opportunity Area Study Plan, we had prioritized this corner of our industrial business zone for mixed commercial industrial development as long as there was retention of a certain amount of industrial space, which the 1160 Flushing plan does. Similarly, Department of City Planning prioritized this sort of mixed industrial commercial use, but most importantly for us, this is the sort of use that was prioritized by the community itself through the Bushwick Community Plan. And this project hits a number of different marks that the community prioritized. It has, no conversion of manufacturing to residential. It maintains at least one FAR of industrial in exchange for additional commercial density. And also, it prioritized Flushing Avenue as a truck route and as a commercial route. And, also this prioritizes industrial growth along the Flushing Avenue corridor. Next slide. So a little bit more about our plan. What this area, in our plan refers to this competing and conflicting uses area, where we acknowledge there's all sorts of different kinds of developments happening here, but in order to allow for additional commercial growth, we'd like to see the retention of a minimum of 1 FAR of industrial, and the 1160 Flushing project does just that. Next slide, please.
So I'll walk you through the specific project details quickly. Next slide. Yep, this slide orients you to the specific location in Bushwick. Here you can see these little dots in red we're located on Flushing at the intersection of Wyckoff Avenue, just around the corner from the Jefferson Street L stop. Next slide. And the current zoning of the area is M11, and we are seeking a rezoning to M15 in line with the community planning goals that Leah just outlined. Next slide. Here's the aerial view of the rezoning area. You can see in that full kind of mid-block to the Wyckoff intersection there in red. Next slide. And then of that red outline, our specific development site is in the hash mark red here, the 2 tax lots that you see outlined. Next slide. And then these are just a few aerial views. We can flip through quickly, site views where you can see the existing current conditions from all 4 corners of the site. And then here is a rendering of what the project would be. The next slide. What we're really excited about, which Leah outlined at the beginning, is the potential to use this project to create a precedent and a model for industrial preservation in the area. We think it can set a precedent for projects in North Brooklyn and beyond. Specifically in this case, we would be preserving industrial uses on site, the minimum 1 FAR that Leah spoke about, and providing growth opportunities for new businesses while also creating space for community-based retail. You can see the breakdown of the space here, and altogether our projections show this has the potential to generate hundreds of new jobs, including up to approximately 40 industrial jobs. Next slide. And then here you can see some comparable precedents. The plans for this project call for ground floor retail space with a mix of industrial and office in the upper floors. Next slide. And then, as Leah mentioned, we've been working with Evergreen since the beginning of conceptualizing this project, but Evergreen would not be going away in their involvement in this project and would be working day to day with us on tenanting the space. So I'll turn it back over to Leah.
Yeah, so we've been advising about the needs of New York City manufacturers and kind of the profile of demand. The sorts of manufacturers that need space in North Brooklyn, and what their attributes are and what their space needs are. So they've been developing the industrial concept around what we know the needs of local manufacturers are. And we've been working with our colleagues throughout the community to both ascertain their opinion and inform them about the project. And finally, when it's up and running, we hope to be able to be recruiting ideal manufacturing tenants for the building and ensuring that the space stays viable for manufacturers.
Next
Next
slide,
slide.
please. I'll just talk you through the balance of the program here real quick. Again, Tucker Reed from Totem. We're really trying to draw on the very vibrant arts and cultural scene in Bushwick. Hopefully you'll see that reflected in some of the building program here. Next slide, please. And then here you get a nice view of how these 3 different programs come together. The pink color is retail, and we think there's a really interesting opportunity for a kind of blend of industrial and retail to coexist on the site, the darker blue being the industrial uses in the building. So, ground floor retail broken up into small spaces for local small businesses, entrepreneurs. We're also reintroducing an old freight throughway that used to exist on the site and creating a pedestrian alley that would be lined by retail on both sides. And again, we can create really small retail spaces there that should be accessible to neighborhood entrepreneurs. But as we move up into the building, you can kind of see how the industrial uses and the retail uses might coexist. Think about like a furniture manufacturer or a distillery or a jewelry maker who can be making their items back of house and then having like a showroom front of house that's accessible to the public, and then the balance of the building being more traditional commercial uses. And if you go to the next slide, you can start to see how in site plan this could work. You could have a dedicated access point for the upper parts of the building off the retail alley. Next slide, please. Then you start to see how the industrial and the retail could coexist as you start to move up into the upper parts of the building. The loading dock is relegated to Flushing Avenue, which is where the heavy truck traffic is already in the neighborhood, so trying not to really be disruptive to traffic plans in the neighborhood. And then the next slide, you start to see, now we move up into more traditional commercial uses, and they could be dedicated to if a single tenant wanted to take an entire floor, or break it up into smaller spaces of 2,000 to 5,000 square feet for neighborhood businesses. I think, and Leah and us have talked a lot about the need for commercial space for folks like architecture firms or digital design firms or post-production for podcasting or film, a lot of which is happening in the neighborhood. So really trying to create a maker ecosystem in the building from the ground level up to the top. And then just to round this out, the next couple of slides, I think talk to, here's an interesting kind of illustrations of what that retail alley could look like. We looked at a lot of precedents around the country and in New York City. And then the next slide talks to our focus. Here's the existing condition today, really bringing back to life that transportation thoroughfare that I talked about, the old train throughway that used to go through here, and reimagining as the pedestrian walkway. Then the final slide, I believe, one more, talks to my partner Vivian had mentioned in the beginning, our focus on regenerative design as a development firm. So really looking at ways of integrating sustainability into the design features here. Green roofs, bioswales, street furniture that acts as both rain catchment and sustainability measures. And so, we're really excited to have had the opportunity to work with Evergreen over the last few years and to really engage with the community. We've probably been working on this project for 3.5, 4 years at this point, and have had a very robust kind of neighborhood engagement throughout the conversation, and hopefully that's reflected in the very positive endorsement we got from the local community board as we went through the process.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would tack on, this is really unusual for our organization to be involved with a private developer, but one of the recommendations from our own Brownfield Opportunity Area Planning Study was that if we want more high-quality manufacturing space for our small manufacturers, these are the sorts of partnerships that we have to get creative about and cultivate. So we're really happy to be part of this. Thanks.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just have a few questions that I'm going to pass it to my colleagues, see if they have any questions. Very interesting concept and idea what you guys are trying to bring to the Bushwick community. Have you identified any tenants for the office space in this building? And what types of businesses do you expect to locate here? And what makes you feel that what makes you confident that the building will lease up?
Yeah, so obviously we're very early in our process in terms of, we're only even at conceptual design. So if we were to get the rezoning approved, we then enter into a more robust design process. So we're a few years away from even embarking on construction probably at this point. So it's really too early to talk to commercial tenants, but I think what gives us the confidence to move forward is not only the interest that we're already seeing in the retail and the industrial space, which would hopefully unlock a lot of the financing for the building, but also just there's been extraordinary office growth in this area, particularly post-COVID. There's a number of buildings that we looked at as precedent, both in North Williamsburg and Bushwick, where they're seeing quite significant office leasing velocity. And I think it's a reflective of people want to be working close to home in the post-COVID world, not necessarily commuting into Manhattan, and particularly a lot of the local entrepreneurs in this corner of Brooklyn for their ability to set up shop around some of the businesses that I mentioned around post-production for digital, podcasting, the kind of creative maker economy that's in this part of Bushwick. Netflix has a huge presence in the neighborhood, and not to say we're going to go out and try to get Netflix as our tenant, but there's all sorts of secondary and tertiary, service providers for those types of large maker facilities that you could imagine being a part of a building like this. So we know that it's a bit of a pioneering project, but I think it's also why we're excited to work on it, because we're trying to prove to both the marketplace and to policymakers that there's an opportunity for industrial and more traditional commercial to coexist in a single building.
I agree, and I think as essence of what you talk about, what I'm trying to grasp is the infrastructure of how you're going to set this building up. You talked about Netflix. I think you mentioned podcasting. You also talked about maybe furniture. So is there a specific type of, I guess, tenant that you're looking for to attract in this area? And you talked about other office buildings in the same facility. Do you know the usage that they have within those office buildings?
So I think the identity of the building that we would be working towards, and Leah, please help me with that, but it's very much like a maker economy building, right? So not every piece of the maker economy is necessarily like heavy manufacturing, but it's people producing content or people producing art or people producing digital media. And I think that's where we really see a niche. And I think in terms of how that maybe heavier industrial uses downstairs could coexist with some of the more post-production type uses upstairs, I think is one of the real reasons that we partnered with Evergreen, given their experience working on industrial development, understanding how do you serve the needs of an industrial tenant, but also make the building accessible to a more traditional type of tenant base. And so I know you've been working on a number of projects like this, huh?
Yeah, and there, I think that, there is an opportunity for both industrial and commercial businesses to coexist within the same structure, but it has to be done really thoughtfully, right? So it has to be done, they have to be thoughtful siting within the building, and they both sets of tenants need access to, loading, elevators, et cetera. For our part, there's still significant demand for manufacturing space. There's no work from home for manufacturing, right? Even throughout the pandemic, we were fielding requests for real estate. So it's particularly in these smaller floor plates, right? The 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 square foot, which is just the size units that we're able to break things down to at 1160 Flushing. So we need to be thoughtful, I think, about curation of the tenant to make sure that it's someone that can coexist with commercial uses. So, we need to be thinking about folks that, a woodworker that may not need a spray booth, right? Certain kinds of metalworking, certain kinds of woodworking, small food production. There's always demand for small food manufacturing, and that can coexist with commercial uses. So,
Yeah, I know there's like a big ask for like ghost kitchens for like chefs. They're looking for like spaces when they want to host like private events. So I know that's something that's really becoming an attraction now. But thank you for that answer. My next question is, I'm concerned about the Evergreen relationship. How will it be codified as time goes on, and what will be the long-term involvement with programming within the building with Evergreen?
well, we obviously, we're part of, the application team at the front end here. But I think over time, when it's time to start, recruiting tenants, we will be formally working with 1160 to be identifying potential tenants and bringing them in, as well as monitoring and oversight to ensure that the industrial space is being leased to manufacturers.
Okay.
So we plan to, and just so there's a legal mechanism to give some teeth to the oversight, we plan on entering into a restrictive declaration with Evergreen to codify those commitments to the building. We've pre-negotiated the document, and we're happy to share it with the committee if that's of interest.
Yes, please. Thank you. My last question, how will the proposed zoning advance the goals of the North Brooklyn IBZ plan, especially on the sites that are not subject to your agreement with Evergreen's exchange?
You want to start?
Yeah, we live in an imperfect world. We're real comfortable with this as it pertains to the sites that Totem has control over. And We're also pretty comfortable with the other sites. One of the buildings is overbuilt already and couldn't get any bigger, even under the new zoning. Another one is an active industrial site that is likely to just stay a metal fabrication site because they have a viable business. And then, the third piece that is not directly controlled was recently renovated. So it's pretty unlikely that there's going to be wildly out of scale commercial development on those other pieces of the property. Like I said, not perfect, but we're comfortable.
Yeah, and I think just a final point, Councilmember, in terms of the how it advances the goals of the IBZ, I think both our intention originally in seeking out Evergreen as a partner, and I think Evergreen's willingness to work with us, and then I think throughout our conversations with community stakeholders, is that folks in this part of Brooklyn, I mean across the city, but particularly this part of Brooklyn, have been talking for a while about how do we revitalize industrial uses and use, more revenue generating uses in a building to really cross-subsidize it. So there's been talk about it for more than a decade now that I'm aware of. We think this is an opportunity to really, take the poster child off the wall and put it into practice and really show that it is possible both to the private marketplace but also policymakers, that we don't need to be thinking about these uses as individual silos. Is a very outdated way of thinking about land use. It's kind of happening in a lot of places organically in this part of Bushwick anyway, where you'll find an architecture studio sharing a building with a woodworker or something, just by nature of what was available to them from a leasing standpoint. So we're excited to be able to kind of demonstrate this, hopefully, as a way of advancing the long-term goals of the IBZ, that in order to put more job-intensive uses in sites like this, you don't need to forego industrial. In fact, you can use industrial as the foundation to build off of.
Thank you. Sustainability is something that you guys discussed in the presentation. Could you discuss, is this a oftenly flooded area in Bushwick? And can you just talk about the sustainability project that you guys plan on bringing to this area?
So I was just looking at our environmental consultant to confirm. We're not in a flood zone here.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Are there any council members with any questions? All right, there being no questions, this applicant team is now excused. Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this item?
No, Chair, there are no remote witnesses registered to testify. If anyone in the room with us here today wishes to testify on this item, please fill out a speaker card and step up to the table. Okay, it appears we have no witnesses signed up for this item.
Thank you. There being no other members of the public who wish to testify on preconsiders LUs related to the ULURP number C210314 ZMK relating to the 1160 Flushing Avenue proposal, the public hearing is now closed and the item is laid over. I will now open the public hearing for preconsiders LU relating to the ULURP number N230068 ZRR relating to the 56 William Avenue proposal in Minority Leader Borelli's district in Staten Island. This application seeks a zoning text amendment to remove a portion of the designated open space within the special South Richmond Development District. For anyone wishing to testify on this item remotely, if you have not already done so, you must register online, and you may do that now by visiting the council's website at council.nyc.gov/landuse. And once again, for anyone with us in person, please see one of the sergeants to prepare or submit a speaker's card. Council, please call the first panel for this item.
Applicant panel for this item is Adam Rothkrug.
Council, please administer the affirmation.
Mr. Rothkrug, please raise your right hand and answer the following question. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony for the subcommittee and in your answer to all council member questions?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin. Panelists, before you begin, please just state your name and organization for the record. You may begin.
Adam Rothkrug of Rothkrug Inspector Attorneys. Thank you. I was trying to think, this might be the smallest application that comes before your committee, maybe ever. I'm here on behalf of the estate of Clement Marat, seeking a zoning text amendment to modify an area of designated open space within the Special South Richmond District. And you can move ahead, Steve. Couple slides. You can go. Keep going. Great. So this approval will facilitate construction of a single two-family home, approximately 2,000 square feet in area, on a lot that's approximately 40 by 100 in size. If you move forward to slide 7. Yeah. The existing open space totals 10,712 square feet, but it's not connected to an open space network, and this space is actually scheduled to be removed by the city itself as part of a city planning text change that is pending with the City Planning Commission. Will probably be coming to the City Council within the next 2 to 3 months. Obviously, when we started this application a couple years ago, that wasn't on the books. So in 2 to 3 months, this action would probably not even be required, but we are here. The site is a vacant lot, 40 by 100. It's never been developed. We're proposing a single two-family house that will conform and comply with the existing R3A district regulations. It will not affect really any other property. If you go to some of the photos, if possible. That's the vacant lot. The surrounding area is primarily developed. The only other thing I would add, if you proceed to the next photo, this is from the back of our property. So this is King Street, which is a map street that runs through our property, and this property previously obtained approval from the Board of Standards and Appeals to build in the bed of the map street. So that approval was required and granted, and this approval will allow the owner to proceed with construction of the single house. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Can you talk a bit about the history of this site? To your knowledge, what is the rationale for including the parcel as designated open space within the Special South Richmond Development District?
So I guess this was a vacant parcel. As I said, it was 10,000 square feet. Some of the open space area mappings don't really seem to make a whole lot of sense, which is why city planning started about 5 years ago with applications to clean up the maps to remove some of these outliers. So I think that a lot of the open space was mapped without specifically looking at what the development of the area was. This is a single lot. The other open space area is developed. There's a street behind us. So again, I think city planning has realized that some of the mappings didn't make a whole lot of sense, and that's why they've rectifying it by removing a lot of these outlying spaces that don't connect to any kind of open space network.
If this rezoning were not approved, what would the applicant plan to do with this site?
So we wouldn't be able to develop it without removing the open space. So that's why it has been sitting as this kind of just vacant lot between all these other houses. Again, if this application were not approved, what we'd probably do is wait for the city's application, which is pending, and we'll probably would have eliminated the need for this application because the city has recognized the appropriateness of this on their own.
Thank you. Do any of my colleagues have any questions? Nope. This applicant is now excused.
Thank you very much.
Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on this item?
Chair, it appears there are no witnesses signed up to testify for this item.
There being no members of the public who wish to testify on preconsidered LUs relating to ULIP number N230068 CRR related to the 56 William Avenue proposal, the public hearing is now closed and the item is laid over. That concludes today's business. I would like to thank the members of the public, my colleagues, subcommittee council, land use and other council staff, and Sergeant Arms for participating in today's meeting. This meeting is hereby adjourned.